fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. We know the drill here. We know the routine. Some of the streams, they take a couple minutes to get rocking and rolling. And right now, it looks like we're good on YouTube. Twitch is still warming up. Facebook, I think, is back in business. We got to make sure that we're alive on Rumble, and we are, and on Twitter. And that means that we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. We're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. Actually, it's kind of a slow news day today. A lot of bickering going on about the debt limit, and we all know that they're never going to let the U.S. default, so not really going to talk about that story, but we are going to dig into what's going on with the FBI. FBI, ATF, all of the other alphabet agencies for a long time have been gobbling up data, getting search warrants, sort of peering into Americans' lives all over the place, whether it's in your home or your car or your blood or your email account, whatever it is. Now they are going to be gobbling up your search information. If you search for certain keywords, well, they're just going to be able to get those records directly from Google. So we're going to show you a search warrant that is sort of being, kicked around. It's unsealed. It was something that the FBI submitted over to Google and said, we want specific data about who might have searched for these things. And so we're going to break that down, go through that warrant, because it is interesting. Basically, anything that you put into the internet now is it's a free-for-all. The feds can go and get it. So got to be extra cognizant about that. If you are somebody searching for the problematic terms. Of course, we're all domestic terrorists now, so I guess we'll see where this goes. Then in our next segment, we're going to talk about the Colorado-based health system that is now refusing to complete a kidney transplant because both the recipient of the kidney and the donor of the kidney, neither of them wants to get the vaccine. And so they say, hey, one lady says, hey, I've got a kidney. Do you need it? And she says, yeah, I do. I need a kidney. And they say, great. Let's go to the hospital and they'll just take my kidney and they're going to put it in you. How about that? Sounds like it's a pretty cut and dry case right there. Wrong. They're both unvaccinated. Hospital says not going to do it. So we're going to show you that story. And it's not just happening in Colorado, also happening in Washington. University of Washington Medicine just unveiled their new policy as well. So we'll break that down. And then in our last segment, we're going to talk about the FBI versus a New York City police union. And so on this story, I really don't know where to fall on this one because I'm not a huge fan of the FBI, but I'm also not a huge fan of police unions, and in particular, New York police unions. And so I'm just torn, my friends, on this story. But we're going to get into it because the FBI did go in and raid the home and the office of a New York Police Department Sergeants Union representative. His name is Edward Mullins, and he's the president of this association. He resigned. FBI's walking out of his office and his home full of boxes. And this is a big police union for the NYPD. So some juicy stuff there. If you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a form here, looks just like this, that you can use to submit your questions, and people are chatting away over there on Locals. I'm shouting out Paula MK's in the house, Peely Wally's here, Three Girlies, I'm Not Gas, John Halgren. We have Vienticus Primes here as well, as along with many others who were chatting away. Over on YouTube, we got shout outs to the usuals. We got Ronnie Cole, we got Vijaya, we have Leans in the house. Wolfgang Deo is here with a couple super chats. We've also got, I saw Zulu up. We're missing Kay Bean. She said hello, but she's not going to be joining us, but a shout out to Kay Bean in the house. We've got Sarah Brown and Oh, John Halgren's over there too. We've got Ryan DeLucci and Lean. There's Lean and K Bean, all of them chatting away, keeping things lively over on the chat on YouTube. All right. And so if you're looking for clips of the show, one final reminder before we get into the actual content, that the clips are now on our clips channel. And that's where you'll find them. So if you can't stick around for the full show, that's where you can find the clips. And so we're going to get into the news right now. Let's get into it. All right. What are we starting off with? I forgot about this. Oh, yeah. The search warrants. Google is now, let me start that again. Google is now cooperating with the federal government, giving them a lot of data about your searches. And so the way that this ordinarily works, when the government wants some information or they want access to something, they go and they get a warrant. And you may have seen this in the TV shows or the movies where the police say, well, I need access to your home. And they say, not without a warrant. And the police go, all right, great. And so they send it back over to the judge. The judge says, what's your probable cause? Why do you need access to that house? The agents are supposed to fill out an affidavit. Sometimes in the movies, they kind of skip that step, or they just say, Judge Johnson will give it to me. And, they do the whole Hollywood thing. But the way it's supposed to work is they get a probable cause statement submitted as an affidavit. They say, Judge, this is why I need to go get access to this person's residence. The judge says, that sounds like a good reason. And then they go give that officer access to that person's residence. Same thing can happen in all sorts of different scenarios. You might get a search warrant for different parts of a vehicle. If you can't get access to that, search incident to arrest. You may also want to get somebody's blood in a DUI case. If they're not going to give you access to that blood vial, you just say, well, I don't want to give you my blood. And they say, well, we are going to get it anyways. And you say, go get a warrant. They go get a warrant. They come back. They show you, got a warrant now to take your blood. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, you give them the arm and they take your blood out of your body. Hard way is they strap you down and take your blood out of your body. And that happens very regularly. It happens all the time. And oftentimes it results in new charges for assaulting a police officer and things of that variety. So it is a very extensive process. We have a lot of safeguards in this country that protect people from unreasonable searches and seizures because we have the Fourth Amendment. Thank the Lord. It's a pretty good amendment for a good reason. But what happens when we're not talking about a specific case, specificity? We're not talking about that one driver or that one house or that one defendant. What happens if we're not talking about that one person's bodily sample? We're talking about, well, kind of a whole gigantic universe of potential data, which might include every single person who searches on Google. It's a pretty big bucket of people who are using that technology. And if law enforcement can just sort of piggyback off of Google to go and investigate whatever is transpiring on their network, that's a pretty powerful tool, isn't it? So if the FBI, the NSA, the ATF, the DEA, any one of these agencies want to go and access that, what do they have to do? It's pretty easy. All they got to do is ask for it. They just have to file a warrant, and Google's going to give it to them. This article comes over from Forbes. Headline here is an exclusive from Forbes. Forbes says that the government secretly orders Google to identify anyone who searched a particular sexual assault victim's name, address, and telephone number. So this is written here by Thomas Brewster, cybersecurity associate editor over at Forbes. Says back in 2019, federal investigators in Wisconsin were hunting men they believe participated in the abuse of a minor. She'd gone missing, but had emerged claiming she was kidnapped and assaulted. This is according to a search warrant that came through. It was reviewed by Forbes. We're actually going to look at a search warrant, not this search warrant. This says, in an attempt to chase down the perpetrators, then, investigators turned to Google. They asked the tech giant to provide information on anyone who had searched the victim's name, 2 spellings of her mother's name, her address over 16 days across the year. After being asked to provide all relevant Google accounts and IP addresses on who made those searches, Google actually gave that data over mid-2020. Court documents did not reveal, though, how many users had their data sent to the government. And so in this case, right, it's kind of a specific, a detailed request, that name, the front and back of the name, her name, 2 spellings of her mother's name, her address, all across 16 days. But what happened if you were just searching for somebody, that you typed in the word like methamphetamine, or how to cook methamphetamine, or how to manufacture LSD? Maybe you're just curious about it. I can tell you that I have been very curious about a lot of things that I've put into Google that I had no intention of doing or actually investigating any further. Just kind of curious to see how it worked. For example, when you were watching Breaking Bad, didn't you kind of wonder if, how complicated is it really? Like, really, how complicated is it to cook meth? Like, could you just go and get an RV and drive it out into the middle of a desert and actually cook methamphetamines? And it turns out, yeah, you can. You pretty much can. How do I know that? Because I looked into it a little bit about the chemical creation of that thing and why they are keeping all the drugs behind the counter now, why you have to sign off before you ever buy pseudoephedrine. And so a lot of people get curious and they search for certain things. Doesn't necessarily make them a criminal unless you want them to be. And so here we have a situation where they don't know anybody specifically. They don't know the person's house they want access to. They don't know specifically whose blood they should be taking. They just kind of want a big dragnet. They want all of the data that they can possibly get. And Google just handed it right over to them. Just get it right over to them and said, no problem, here's all the data that you want. This is a rare example of what's called a keyword warrant. So this means that a number of search terms included the broadest on record. You can see the update below. Let's see. One revealed in 2020 asked for anyone that had searched an address of an arson victim. So anybody who put that address into their phone might have been on the government's list. Another from 2017 revealed that a Minnesota judge signed off on a warrant asking Google to provide information on anyone who searched a fraud victim's name within the city of Adena. Okay? So it's not anything specific. It's not even like, we want this young girl's name on these 16 days. It's like, hey, we're just going to search her name. Anybody who searched her name in Adena ever. We just want the names of all those people. Okay. And now they're on the government's investigatory list. Scary stuff. While Google deals with thousands of such orders every year, the keyword warrant is one of the more contentious. In many cases, the government will already have a specific Google account that they want information on, and they already have proof it's linked to a crime. But search term orders are effectively fishing expeditions, hoping to ensnare possible suspects whose identities the government does not know. It's not dissimilar to so-called geofence warrants, where investigators ask Google to provide information on anyone within the location of a crime scene at a given time. And we saw that happen a lot back during the January 6th protests. Remember, they wanted all the geofence data, basically anybody who was in the vicinity whose cell phone was pinging off any of those cell towers at the time. They wanted all of that data, and they probably got it from AT&T and all of the different telecom companies. Here, what they're talking about, again, is not dissimilar. So let's go back to the DUI analogy. In a DUI case, you can have a roadway with thousands of cars driving down the road all day, all night long. And what the police are supposed to do is say, we're going to monitor all this, and we're going to identify bad driving. We're going to identify that guy who's weaving within the lanes, the person who is following too close, who doesn't have their headlights on, which, according to NHTSA, if you don't have your headlights on, there's like a 50% chance that you're drunk, according to their standards. So if you see somebody without their headlights on, that's kind of the first thing that police do is oh, that's a drunk person. And so what they're doing is they're articulating a specific reason, a basis for stopping that person and investigating that person, because everybody else on the road has a right to privacy, has a reasonable expectation of privacy, has a right to travel around, has the protection provided by our Constitution to sort of exist in life without being berated by law enforcement everywhere you go. You got to leave people alone. I know that's not in vogue these days, but that is the default, actually. Freedom is the default. Being micromanaged by police and bureaucrats and little dictators and medical maniacs, that's not the default. That is a new thing that's happened very recently. Default is freedom. And so that's kind of what we want to continue to adhere to. So when people are driving down the roadway and you single out that one guy who looks like he may be drunk and you pull him over and you continue your investigation, that's all done appropriately. Totally reasonable to do that based on our current understanding of the right to privacy, the Fourth Amendment, and those types of things. But that's not what's happening here. This would be sort of like in that same roadway, just kind of setting up a net and just saying, yeah, everybody that comes through here, everybody that comes down this road, we're just going to go ahead and pull you over, and we're going to go ahead and just take your blood. And that's just part of the process now. We're going to go in and investigate you and make sure, look into exactly what you were doing, right? Your behavior specifically. What were you doing? Were you drinking or not? And so we're going to go in and we're going to withdraw your blood, and that's just how it goes now. And so that would be a problem for most people, but this is sort of not a problem for the courts. They're just saying that they can go into your search records based on what you entered into Google and see exactly what you did, even though there's no articulable suspicion of any wrongdoing. You just typed in something into the internet. You just wanted to see how Walter and what Jesse, how they were concocting their little formulas out in Breaking Bad, but you had no intention of actually doing that. Is that a thought crime? Are you somebody who's going to end up on an FBI watch list for that? Yeah, probably. So that's sort of the distinction that we're talking about. It's identifying somebody, being able to articulate specifically what they did that was criminal, that justifies further inquiry, versus here, the police can't identify anybody. They don't know who the hell they want, but they want data from Google so that they can hone in, and they're peering into stuff that maybe you think you have a reasonable expectation of privacy to that would be covered by the Fourth Amendment. We'll see where this goes. Forbes continues. Before we get into the actual warrant itself, Forbes is telling us that the latest case shows Google is continuing to comply with these requests despite concerns over their legality and the potential to implicate innocent people who happen to search for relevant terms. From the government's perspective in Wisconsin, the scope of the warrant should have been limited enough to avoid the latter. The number of people searching for specific names, address, and phone numbers was likely to be low. Probably true, but still, what does that have to do with anything? Privacy experts are concerned about the precedent set by these warrants and the potential for any such order to be a breach of the Fourth Amendment. Also concerns about First Amendment freedom of speech, given the potential to cause anxiety amongst Google users that their identities could be handed to the government because of what they searched for. Yeah, it's concerning if you think that you have privacy with Google. And so this kind of applies not to just to Google, yes, but to Facebook and to all of the other, Amazon, all the different tech companies. They're all going to sort of fall in lockstep with this. So basically anything you put out there, got to imagine that's a free-for-all. So the next time you're watching a show on methamphetamine production, maybe, I'm talking to myself, maybe don't search for those terms, or use a VPN and DuckDuckGo. How about that? Which I think uses Bing. So there are alternatives to this. Now, let's dig into the actual warrant that was filed out of the Western District of Texas. You can see this here. We can start at the top. We see that this was originally sealed, filed back on January 10th, 2019. And this is actually pretty interesting. I know sometimes we do some heavy lifting here by reading through some of these documents, but I wanted to just show you sort of what they were asking for. So you can see it's not identifying any particular defendant at all. We have a case number here. It's not talking about Robert Gruler or, Robert aliases, Robbie F. Gruler or, Robert Jr. or any of those things. This is about data that Google has. It's in the matter of the search of information for Google searches and various search terms that are stored at the premises controlled by Google. This is the government, the FBI, the executive branch now, telling a private company, Google, hey, we got a court order here to go and search your records. You can see, again, 11 pages. We'll kind of fly through some of this. We have here, it says, this was written by an FBI agent, Scott Kibbey. He's sworn in. I support an affidavit here. I want a warrant, a search warrant for information associated with certain search terms, and we're going to see what those are, that were entered into Google search or YouTube. All that data, of course, is going to be stored over in Google premises. They're using the federal rules of criminal procedure. They want Google to disclose copies of those things to the government. And you can see the rest of that there is sort of nuts and bolts. Paragraph 2, we can see specifically what search terms they're looking for. And so some of this has been redacted out, but it says in particular, this application, we want the following search terms as described further in attachment A, but listed down here. So we have this one is redacted or something else redacted. We don't know what those are, but we also have the words that are explosives or IED or a pipe. I don't even want to say some of these words because YouTube will get mad at me. But what you can see here is they're talking about low explosives or a PVC bomb or an IED or a trigger or explosion or we're probably setting off the FBI right now. So we'll just go ahead and say it. Pipe bomb. We've got pipe bomb, PVC bomb. We've got other explosives. And they're basically, if you type these things into Google, then you would get search results. And so how many people are typing those words in there on a regular basis? A lot of people. And so what they're doing is they're saying anybody who is connected to those terms, and so just insert whatever of those terms you might want, how to barbecue chicken or something like that, or a recipe for something, right? If they wanted to find that data, Google could do that. It's all indexed. It's all recorded somewhere. This guy who wrote this says he's been a special agent with the FBI since 2011, field office, former job training, authorized to investigate all this stuff, execute search warrants all the time. He's a federal law enforcement officer according to the rules. What he's saying here, why are they investigating this? Why do they need these records, these keyword search warrants? APD, ATF, FBI, USPIS, and many others are investigating bombings that occurred in Austin, Texas back in 2018, March of 2018. There were pipe bombs that were concealed inside a cardboard box. Each one of those is legally classified as a destructive device, which gives them permission to go and investigate it further. Information is being sought by the FBI here, and they want search terms everywhere, everything from January 1, 2018, all the way to March 2nd, 2018. So anybody who searched these terms and many others, right? There's an appendix that goes on, but anything between those two dates, January 1st to March 2nd, 2018, if you're somebody who typed something like that into it, then they're going to get your name, or at least that's what they want. Now, the affidavit continues. It says there's preliminary evidence that was recovered from this address in Austin, Texas, may have been utilized to detonate that pipe bomb. Law enforcement has assessed these explosive devices. Law enforcement believes that all three explosions are linked and that they may be interconnected. So they've talked about pipe bombs, PVC explosives, all of that. There were nails apparently in there for means of fragmentation. The government has not found any information of a registered destructive device for any of the victims of these bombings, making possession of them unlawful is what it says. All right. So he's just going through and he's just saying, he's sort of justifying why they need this search warrant approved. He's going through a series of bombs that were explosions that were linked together. We've investigated some of the properties. We need to know who was thinking about making these, and he's talking about the actual construction of the devices, cardboard boxes, nails for means of fragmentation. And so if we can maybe go and identify who was searching for these things, we can find out what websites they landed on, and maybe reverse connect that back to the actual purveyor. He gives us some information about Google. He says, in my experience, I've learned that Google provides a variety of online services, Google, search engine, all of that stuff. We all know it. He says, in my training and experience, there's information there that could constitute evidence of crimes. And so that's why I need it. He says, Google generally asks subscribers to provide certain personal identifying information when you register for an email account. So such information can give them the full name, physical address, phone numbers, identifiers, whether they're paying for subscribers. A source of payment can include any credit card or bank account numbers. We have, based on my training and experience, even if subscribers insert false information to conceal their identity, their information often provides clues to their identity, location, or illicit activities. So even if you're using a burner Google account and you're still searching for it, yeah, they're going to get some useful information. They're going to get your identity, location, whether you're searching for other things. They can create a profile and then use that data to go after you. The affidavit continues. It says, in my training and experience, Google retains certain transactional information about the creation and the use of accounts. It can include the date it was created, the length of the service, all sorts of other stuff, because now you have the Google you can log in with Google with that one account, right? You have a Gmail, you can log into almost anything on the internet now. And so if you have that, it can sort of track around everywhere you go using that login information. It can say literally logging into the account via the provider's website. Other IP addresses are stored. Every device that connects to the internet must use an IP address. And if they can get an IP address, then they can backtrace that all the way to the person. They can identify the actual person. So they can go from a search. So somebody that has nothing to do with anything that's being investigated searches for something, and that person's name gets on a Google list, goes over to the FBI. FBI then says, oh, perfect. We're just going to go down this list and we're going to go harass all of those people. Why do they need this? Well, Google may provide crucial evidence of the who, what, why, when, where, and how of the criminal conduct, which would be very useful for the government because that kind of proves their whole case, right? So if they can just go and get that data, man, it's going to be really easy for them to prove their case. They can use user attribution to take the evidence and find indicia of occupancy while even executing search warrants at a residence. So what this essentially means is once they can get started on this, They can go and identify who the person is, identify other areas of potential criminality, then execute a search warrant for that person's actual property, and then go and get it. So you start with this big, broad net, see what you catch, and then you can really hone in on the actual person. And so we can see this wraps up. It says that the Google computers are going to have everything we need. They're going to have all the IP addresses, all the user agent strings, everything for Google and for YouTube. And so can you just give it to us? And it sounds like they did. You can see this was signed off on here by Scott Kibbey over with the FBI. Honorable Judge Mark Lane approved this. These discussions will continue forward, and they asked the court to seal this because they don't want to jeopardize the investigation, of course. All right, and so that's what the FBI is doing, gobbling up your data. Anything you put into Google, anything you put onto the internet, anywhere, essentially. You've got FBI agents tracking those search keywords down, and Google's complying. What do you have to say about this? Let's see what's happening over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got some questions here. Vianticus Prime says, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems the time has come to troll by spamming keywords over and over again into the search engine. That's not a bad idea there. That's from Vianticus. He's probably going to have several FBI agents parachuting into his house, so that's going to be very exciting. Rad is here, says, I bet you're lying about it always being sunny in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's true, I'm busted. In fact, yesterday, it wasn't that sunny. We had a lot of clouds. We had a lot of rain yesterday. It was beautiful. We don't get much of that. Yesterday, it is beautiful and sunny today, but yesterday, you're right. I was fibbing a little bit. No question about it. Busted by Rad. Realtor Patty is here, says, Robert, tell everyone to like and share on YouTube. That's from Realtor Patty. I didn't say it. She said it right there. Look at that, right there. Like and share on YouTube. That's from Realtor. I didn't say it, but Realtor Patty said it. And thank you, Realtor Patty. I would appreciate if everybody did that. We have another one from George Washington. Wow, what an honor. We're becoming more and more like Australia, where the government gives you your rights. This is America. Our rights are God-given. This administration must respect the Constitution or eventually suffer the consequences at the voting booth. That's from George Washington. Amazing, man. Let's see what else we have on Google Keyword Warrants. We got Geomancy Games is here. Subscribe on YouTube. So on this topic, I was literally given a prescription to fentanyl the other day to wear a patch because of the extreme pain of my cancer. I want to know the side effects to watch out for. And all the Google would spill to me is about people who have OD'd or George Floyd. Sure, I'm now in a database. It's disgusting. That is disgusting. Geomancy Games is another content creator over on YouTube. And if you want to go and support him, that's a good thing to do. Yeah, but he's also on a list now. So if you go subscribe, you're probably also going to be on a list. We're on a list together, Geomancy. We can all commiserate. Let's go. Brandon is here, says, of course, Google is a Fed honeypot designed to entrap you and throw you in jail. The Feds are a-holes, and let them screw them over by using Tor, VPN, DuckDuckGo, or Quant. Use Search Alt, use Proton Mail, use, don't know what that one is, end-to-end encryption, like Signal, like Element. Let's make the Fed's job harder, and let's go, Brandon, is what Let's Go, Brandon says. You know, I think they have flags for that now over on the Let's Go Brandon, support community, which is just a great meme. That was from Let's Go Brandon. We have another one. Vianticus says, isn't it great that all these people are so environmentally conscious about promoting surveillance and control by organizations that collectively consume well over 100 million gallons of potable water globally in a single day in all the server farms? Yeah, it is interesting, the double standards and the hypocrisy. There's no question about that. Let's see what else. We've got CP Miller is here, says, for a suit, I actually don't know, interference on your ability to get ad revenue until too late to get full potential. Thanks. I'm not sure what that question is on that one. I apologize. Peely Wally says, Rob, you're looking well. The internet is now very much the enemy of the people. I don't mean to sound like a Sandra Bullock movie in the movie The Net there, but trust is completely shattered. Can you trust Gates with his links to Epstein? Can you trust Zuckerberg with his Facebook crash on the day of damaging evidence being against Facebook? It's all tied to the same mess of corruption that doesn't think of us as customers, but as prey to manipulate. Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's from Peely Wally. Yeah, the Facebook thing is weirder and weirder by the day. A lot of people, I think, are getting kind of caught up here. What do you do about Facebook and this whole Facebook whistleblower thing? On the one hand, Facebook is trash, and they censor and really make it difficult to actually communicate. And we know that they are tipping the scales every which way. We saw it. We all lived through what they did back during the election, and how they were limiting certain stories and stopping the reach of other stories, and the list goes on. But you also have this whistleblower that people want to sort of champion because they're dunking on Facebook and saying how horrible they are. But this lady is coming out and talking about, oh, well, the solution is we need even more censorship because it's so dangerous over there. And she like has a verified Twitter account that has like 50,000 subscribers or followers on Twitter. That's verified. And she is her account just opened in in October, like this month, October 2021. So the whole thing seems like it was just set up to me. And so I don't really take anything that she says seriously. It sounds like this whole thing has been coordinated. And anytime that you see people in the mainstream media, like the main news people, that are like, yeah, this is great. This woman is really speaking the truth. Well, you got to understand, they're talking about a direct competitor. Nobody's watching CNN anymore. Nobody is watching MSNBC anymore, right? Even Fox News is even having trouble aside from a couple hosts, but everybody's going onto the internet. And so when you see all the media going, yeah, Facebook's terrible, we got to really stop Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino over there, you go, all right, like everybody knows where your bread is buttered and why you want Facebook to suffer the consequences a little bit. The Schadenfreude is very, very obvious. We have, what's this one? Oh, yeah. We have a question here. The name is Zulu searches for Jen Psaki photos. I'd love to see a Google search history from that crew in the Watching the Watchers YouTube chat. It's true. I mean, I don't, who knows what we're all searching for. I don't want the feds going through my search history. I'll say it. I'll just go out and say it. I don't want them. I'm a curious guy. I've got a lot of interesting queries. A lot of it has to do with criminal law and all sorts of, governmental questions that are going on there. But it's okay. I'm already on a list. I know that's just where that is going to end up, and I'm at peace with that. We've got Soul Viking is here, says, luckily, people at this point in time are still able to use alternate search engines, more private browsers, and VPNs if they choose. But for how long? Our Congress has tried to encroach widely on privacy, and at some point, they will probably succeed. I think it's pretty much safe to say, and honestly, I kind of joke about my search history and stuff like that, but I really do try to keep a pretty tight standard. I kind of have of the mindset that anything I put into the internet, including this show, is a permanent record. So if I send an email, I'm like, oh gosh, what if somebody's going to read this in court one day? I try to keep things pretty cut and dry. I'm a lawyer, and so I sort of assess risk in that way. But but still, right? We shared this quote here before. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. You can criminalize virtually anything you want. Anybody that drives to work every day or drives their kids to school is committing like 5 crimes every day, right? Every single time that you don't turn into the immediate lane. In most states, that's a crime. Oh, it's a wide right turn. Oh, it's a wide left turn, right? Everything is criminalized. And so this is where some of the concern comes into play, which we will continue to detail here on this channel, of course. A couple other questions. We've got I'm Not Gas says, don't Google Control Pew. I don't know I'm not going to Google it. I don't want to do that. Kenny 1B says, where does a DUI checkpoint fall into this? Well, some states will allow that, right? Some states have DUI checkpoints that are still authorized. It's not a thing here in Arizona, but it is in many other states. And so you could have, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that because you could sort of introduce that into the analogy. I think that they're unconstitutional. I don't think that they should be able to stop everybody without reasonable suspicion. They need to they need to have an articulable reasonable suspicion before they stop somebody, and DUI checkpoints aren't doing that. It's a dragnet enforcement, and so I think that they are totally unconstitutional. But you're right. There are states that still do them. I think California might be one of them. Hyper Patriot says, "Is there any privacy left in this country? Have you heard about DuckDuckGo search engine giving up data on their users?" No, I did not hear about that. That sounds like a death sentence for their search engine if they were to do that, but what do I know? Sergeant Bob says, in the view of the current weaponizing of the DOJ, these keyword warrants are troubling. Yeah, and that's a whole nother point, right? We have to sort of introduce that into the conversation. Not only is it a problematic, in my opinion, Sergeant Bob might disagree with this, a inappropriate use of, it's an inappropriate methodology of conducting dragnet fishing expedition types of surveillance. It's even worse under the current DOJ because they are already encroaching all over the place. We have a whole slide on that we talked about yesterday. We have another one from Let's Go Brandon, says, considering that Google, yes, okay. Considering that Google is a Fed honeypot, consider using Graphene OS and use DuckDuckGo to frustrate the feds. Take your privacy into your own hands. Courts are unreliable. Rob, considering Google is trash, have you considered using Stream Elements or Stream Labs where you get close to 100% of the donations instead of the super chat? Hashtag Let's Go Brandon. You know, I use Streamlabs actually as my streaming platform. See that just popped up there? That's a stream element in Streamlabs OBS. So I'm sure that I could do that. You know, it's just another thing. You know, honestly, the money is kind of an afterthought, candidly. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is an afterthought. And so, you know, if Google's going to take 30% of the super chats, it's like, all right, that's just the cost of doing business. But it is appropriate, right? There are other ways that I could monetize this stream and probably use that additional revenue to increase the value of the show or to, you know, advertise the show or to expand it. It's a good thought. I'll have to think about it. We have another one from Nadarb, says the federal government needs to be abolished. They are enemies of freedom. They've been pushing way too far for too long. I'm beyond done with them. There's no fixing the system. This judge needs to be ousted. He obviously has zero respect for the Constitution. That's from Nadarb. And let's see any other comments over on Watching the Watchers. .locals.com. Oh my gosh, yeah, we do. We have a lot of them, actually. Pick up the pace here. News Now Wyoming says, I'm not surprised the judge signed off on this. They can get a warrant against anything. I would be more interested to know what came of the search warrant. If any case started with the warrant would be later thrown out due to a horrible search warrant. Warrants have been thrown out a lot, so all is not lost. I'm concerned about the privacy, of course, but do not want anyone to think my comments support such act. That's from News Now Wyoming, which is a very good comment. And I think it's very pertinent, right? Because the real danger here would be that they use this, they get sort of a first round of evidence and they go, okay, look, we didn't know who this was in the first place. Now we have a list of 500 people and we wean that list down to 3 people. And then we wean that list down to 2 people. And then we go and we get additional warrants and we go and investigate their homes and we find the guy that did it. And you got an innocent person caught up in that, not to mention the other 498 people that had a lot of their personal details rifled through until they could hone the funnel down to the one person. All of that, in my opinion, is unconstitutional. You can't just start with nothing and then deduce your way down into something. You got to have something articulable. Because the problem there is that anybody can find anything about anybody. You start at the top and you just go, oh, we're going to go get this person, and you're going to work your way into it. Or if you then don't have a justification to go and investigate that person at the bottom of the funnel, you go, now that you know who it is, and you go make it up outside of this particular process. You just go, oh, well, now we're just going to go sit outside his house, wait for a loud sound. Something happening in there, might be a murder, exigent circumstances, knock the door down, and now you get access to the house. But you just got it through sort of a pseudo extra constitutional process here, which are these keyword search warrants. It is troubling. We have another one. Nadarb says, there was no honor among Mark Lane. I don't know. Who's Mark Lane? Did we just talk about him? Former LEO says, will the Let's Go Brandon trigger a warrant? I don't know. You know, good question. IP address will also link to all other IP contacts. What is useless is the ACL. What is the useless ACLU doing about this? Talk about a shotgun approach to an investigation. That's from a former LEO, folks. You heard it here. John Delar says some Democrats will weaponize this politically. I don't trust this at all. My hobby is being a crime junkie. I search for things that may try to help solve cold cases or unidentified people. I'm sure my searches would probably seem suspicious. There are a lot of crime junkies out there. Twitter and Facebook are already weaponized. This is the next step. Yeah, and they can just connect you to anything, right? Whatever you're searching for. We have News Now says, I still don't see how Google is still not seen as an agent of the government. They silence you on government behalf. They give the government what they want. I kind of think, you know, it's sort of the opposite in many ways. I sort of think that Google and Facebook and Amazon, they're kind of the head honchos in this whole power dynamic. And you can just see that, right? Now, ultimately, I know that the government, you know, has the ability to change the course of each one of those corporations with a snap of a pen of your fingers. But practically, how does this really work? All the Republicans like Ted Cruz and all of these useless people, all complain about big tech. And we're going to go out there and fight big tech. And Josh Hawley, oh, they all haul him in front of Congress. And they come in front of Congress, and Zuckerberg puts on his human skin for about 2 seconds and says, yes, Senator, yes, Senator, yes, Senator, no, Senator. We don't do any of this crap. Turns out they're doing all of that crap. They're lying to the Congress people right in front of their faces. But these people are octogenarians. They're like 200 years old, and they have a very difficult time even understanding what a Facebook is. And so it's very difficult for any actual oversight to take place, not to mention all of them have been bought and paid for by all of the lobbyists that Amazon, Facebook, and Google employs. So it's this little sort of a stupid show that we see regularly. And I would say that regularly, Google and Facebook can really influence what happens in this country to a larger degree than anything that any of these Congress people are doing. The real power lies with them, not with Ted Cruz. Lord Nelson says, we have become the sci-fi person of interest. That was so fascinating. Yeah, the person of interest from Lord Nelson. We have one from Vienticus says, not to go too far off on a tangent, but apparently the lawsuit that Trump brought against Twitter, there's a new motion. The new motion cites a precedent for social media to be considered for limited purpose government actors in specific cases. So with Google, Twitter, and so on, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Look, I've long argued and said here that there should be a digital Bill of Rights. If the current Bill of Rights that guarantees free speech and free expression and free association, if that exists in the physical world, well, most of our lives are now in the digital world. And so there should be something like that that exists. In many parts of America, you couldn't leave your house. The only real public square that you had was the digital sphere. You couldn't go out and associate with your friends. CDC until recently said, there is no Thanksgiving anymore. You got to stay home. Fauci's like, well, it's too early to talk about Christmas. Well, what do you have now? You've got Facebook and you've got your meetings. You've got all of your digital life. And if they get to say you can't associate with those people, or you can't say these things, or that is now banned, or you misspoke against this particular policy, that's a problem. Why wouldn't those same civil rights that apply in the physical space apply to the digital space? And now what they're doing is they're just outsourcing all of these things to corporations. And they're just, it's not the government censoring you. It's Facebook. It's not the government. It's Google. And so that's how they escape it. And a lot of people that are very in favor of censorship are just clapping their hands like dumb seals, excited that this is happening because it's happening to their political opponent. And I get it. If this was happening and the Republicans were winning as the Democrats were getting booted off social media, I'm sure conservatives would be like, yeah, this is great. They have the wrong idea. I disagree. It's about freedom of speech. It's about freedom of association, freedom of expression. I think that Democrats and liberals and everybody all the Antifa people, whatever they want to say, bring it out into the public. Let's hear your stupid arguments and let's dissect them. But when you dismiss people, when you demonize their perspectives, you ruin the conversation that really should be happening. And it's actually a disservice to society. We had a question here. I think that was in Russian or something. Duck, duck, go. Oh, no, I'm not going to even read that one. Thomas Jefferson says, when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. That's a good quote. Did he say that? It's powerful. Sergeant Bob says, I agree, Rob. Too much fishing without basis. Surprised? Your show has caused me to rethink a lot. Sergeant Bob is in the house too. Also saying it sounds like it's a little bit too broad. I'm not surprised, Sergeant Bob. You're a very reasonable man. A very excellent police officer, I would have imagined. We have former LEO says, would these overly broad warrants make YouTube an agent of the government? I sort of was opining on that, but I don't think that there is too much of a stretch to make that argument. We have D-Rod is here, says, we have it's saying the city of Miami Beach, very long weekend when tourists fly in, has checkpoints on every bridge leading into the island. I've been stuck in those coming home from work. It's hours. One of the many reasons sold and came back to the suburbs. The traffic on the highways was bumper to bumper on holiday break and clutch the whole way home. That's from D-Rod. Got some traffic over there in Florida. What a pain in the butt. Sorry to hear about that, D-Rod. We have Geomancy says a digital Bill of Rights sounds nice, but Republicans wouldn't go for it either. Yeah, well, they're useless. We know that. That's why a constitutional convention of the states would be appropriate. Thomas Jefferson said, yes, I did say that. Also, please read the Federalist Papers. I have, Thomas. All right, stop yelling at me. I was a political science major. I have them. They're back there on the bookshelf on the bottom shelf. I think the Federalist Papers are back there. You're right. I'm due up for a refresh on those. It's been a long time. Very important documents. Former LEO says, how about a warrant search for dump Trump so that the Democrats can feel some heat? Yeah, two could play it that way, that game, can't they? That's from former LEO. We got some super chats that came in over from YouTube. Wolfgang Deo's in the house with several of them. Says, we need to find out what keywords trigger Google, disseminate them, use them constantly, flood the warrants, take up their valueless time. Yeah, well, they're already, I think they're good on time. I mean, they have like a whole division dedicated to finding Waldo in the Where's Waldo coloring books over there at the FBI. I think it's called the Children's Division something, but they got a whole team of people over there when they're not showing up at fake protests. Wolfgang also says, I'm audiobooking Trump's executive orders. Going to be back in 5. He's back. He also says, because DuckDuckGo would not want to hire somebody of your skin color, gender, and possible views, I am unsure if I wish to continue using them. He also says, let's go, Brandon and de Blasio. Wolfgang is in the house. Rodney Price subscribed. We have Austin Prestridge here says, I saw that the whistleblower isn't bringing anything to the SEC despite the SEC paid over $1 billion in awards to whistleblower in 2021. Seems sketch. Yeah, that's from Austin. Yeah, I think I think you're talking about the Facebook whistleblower and that the SEC is not going to do anything to address that. And then Chris Wolney says, what if Google was actually a front for the NSA? Yeah. If you want to go down that conspiratorial route, I'm happy to do that. I think that there's a lot there, right? They sort of pick certain entities to latch onto early in their development, like a Facebook, like an Amazon, like a Tesla, like a SpaceX, anyone like the Google guys, right? The establishment, CIA, whatever you want to call it. Let me cough real fast. We got to get that out of there. But we have, you could see a situation in which they sort of pick their superstar, they puff those companies up, they ride them to the top, they put all their eggs in that basket. They say, okay, social media is going to be a thing. We have to pick a winner here. They pick it and they make it happen with Facebook, with Amazon, with Google. Kind of the same model that you see over with the Chinese, right? You see Jack Ma over at Alibaba. He gets big. The mega state sort of beefs him up. When he starts to get a little bit squirrely, what happens? Well, the Communist Party takes him aside. They lock him back in in solitary confinement. They give him a little bit of re-education. He comes back out. And, oh, yeah, China's great. I forgot about that. And so, it's a little bit different over there, but you can see how it would be in our government's interest to make sure that they're closely intertwined with all of these mega conglomerates because they're using them to force policy. I mean, literally, everywhere you go. Every time you open Instagram or Facebook, a vaccine, get your vaccine, get your vaccine, get your vaccine. It's turning into an entity, a long arm of the government to some degree. And so why wouldn't they be infiltrated? We already saw all of that with PRISM. We saw that the U.S. government was literally building backends into all of the major tech companies. There's a slide that Edward Snowden leaked. Said that, yeah, we got into Microsoft in 2006. We got into Google in 2003. We got into YouTube at this one, right? And they just show you the exact moment when they were literally building in the infrastructure to siphon off the data at the backbone of the internet. It's all, I sound like Alex Jones. It's all documented. And it is. It really is. All right, we have another one over here from Locals. Thomas Jefferson says, who loves you, Rob? Keep up the good work. That's from TJ. Former LEO says, Al Gore screwed us when he invented the internet. Yeah, all these problems stem from Al Gore, which I thought we were supposed to be underwater by now. Wasn't the world supposed to end like 5 years ago? I can't remember the timeline on this thing. All right, those were great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. FBI topics, a lot of good questions. We're going to move on into the next segment. But before we do, let's give some shout outs over on Locals. We've got Paula MK, Peely Wally, Three Girlies is back. I'm Not Gas. John Halgren's over there. We have Vienticus Prime. And and they're chatting away. Over on YouTube, we've got Danette Vijaya. We've got Any Biss. We have Freedom, X-Force, Playing Hooky, Wolfgang Deo, and Lean. On Rumble, we've got shout-outs to Ravencraft, Southern Bix, and Road Trek Girl. All in the house chatting away. Yeah, that's nice. Yes. Oh, man. Okay, so good stuff going on over there. Thank you for all of your support. I do appreciate it. All right, and so we're going to move into the next segment now. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Vaccine mandates. You see them all over the place. Coming to a local hospital near you as well, especially if you're going to be somebody who needs a transplant, an organ transplant. We now have 2 hospitals that came out today and said, unless you are fully vaccinated, if you need that kidney, well, not going to get it. You got to get fully vaccinated if you're going to have that organ put into your body. The first story that we're talking about comes from Colorado. Colorado-based health system is saying it is denying organ transplants to patients that are not vaccinated in almost all situations. How do they justify it? They say that these patients will likely die, or are much more likely to die if they in fact get COVID. Policy now illustrates the growing cost of being unvaccinated, and it wades into controversial territory, the use of immunization status to decide who gets medical care. Remember those 2 tiers that we've been screaming about here for the last 18 months or so, talking about the society now bifurcating into 2 systems? You got the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. If you're vaxxed, now you get to participate in society. Mayor de Blasio literally said that. If you want to go and be a part of New York City, well, got to get vaccinated. Otherwise, you don't get to enjoy the same privileges as everybody else. You are a sub person. Same thing that Joe Biden said. Hey, listen, the vaxxed, you can keep your jobs. But if you're unvaccinated, sorry, you're out of here. You got to go get it. Otherwise, using obscure OSHA standards, you are now going to be fired. Coming up soon. And the deadlines are all around the corner for many people in all different parts of the world. So 2 tiers of people. And the slow creep has been continuing down. At some point, we were going to be saying, well, what happens about medical care? What happens about, I don't know, going to the grocery store? What happens about hopping on an airplane? Does this keep continuing down and down and down? And yes, it does. It also goes now into hospitals where they're saying specifically, go get that vax. Otherwise, no organs. Here is the rest of the story. The organization who is doing this is the University Health's Rules. UC Health is the name of the organization. Talking about a Colorado representative named Tim Geithner said that a Colorado Springs woman, we're going to hear from her next, is being refused a kidney from the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in the city of Aurora. We're going to take a look at the letter. This is the letter that the woman received, and this was sent on September 28th. Of course, her mailing address and all that has been blocked. You can see it comes from UC Health Transplant Center, from Anschutz Medical, and several people tagged this. I'm Not Gas tagged this over on Locals, and somebody sent me this on Twitter. Thank you also. It says the transplant team at the University of Colorado Hospital has determined that it's necessary to place you inactive on the waiting list. You'll be inactivated on the list. Why? For non-compliance by not receiving the COVID vax. You'll have 30 days to begin the vaccination series. If your decision is to refuse the COVID vaccination, you will be removed from the kidney transplant list. You will continue to accrue waiting time, but you will not receive a kidney offer while listed inactive. Once you complete the COVID vaccine series, you'll be reactivated on the kidney transplant list, pending any other changes in your health condition. If you have any questions, call me. Attached is the letter from the United Network for Organ Sharing. It describes the service and information that have been offered to you, signed off on here by Katie over with uchealth.org. And so, you might say, well, listen, Rob, there's only so many organs to go around, and so we better want to give those to the right people who are healthy. And there is precedent for this. I'm not a medical doctor, but I am somebody who spent a lot of time in recovery in the 12 steps and many different AA rooms. And even though I had my own issues with alcohol, I still consider myself to be a person in active recovery. But it is, something that I never did so much damage to my body that I would have needed a new liver. But if I did need a new liver, they're not going to give me one if I am still an alcoholic, right? Because they would just give me that new liver, and I would trash that liver, wouldn't I? So they'd want to see that you're a recovered person, you're working a program, you're doing stuff so that that perfectly good liver that they give you doesn't go into your body and just get abused again. And so you can see how it sort of does make logical sense to have these types of conversations about, well, listen, yes, we are going to help you, but you can't continue to do damage to the liver, right? We're not going to give you something that you're going to destroy when there's another person who is actively in need of that. And so you can see how some of those medical decisions might need to be met, right? But what about if we have a situation like this one, where we have a Colorado woman with a stage 5 renal failure? She's months away from getting a new kidney. Now she and her donor are looking for another hospital. Okay, so now we're talking about two people who are making a decision about what they want to do. Let's see if we can peer into this a little bit further. According to UC Health, the majority of transplant recipients and living donors are now required to get vaccinated, but neither woman in this case has received their shots. You can see the two down here. On the left, we have Leilani Lutali, and on the right, we have Jamie Fogner over here. And they met in Bible study just 10 months ago. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Let's see what we've got. It says those two people now want to transmute a kidney. So we have Jamie Fogner has a kidney that is ripe and ready to go, perfectly available to be transplanted into Leilani Lutali. Ready to go. Neither one of those women has gotten the vaccine. They met at Bible study 10 months ago. I've got a kidney. That's great. I need a kidney. Hey, hospital, can you just swap one of these puppies in for us? No, we can't. Why not? Well, for transplant patients, says UC Health, the ones who contract COVID-19, the mortality rate ranges from about 20% more to 30%. Shows extreme risk that COVID-19 poses to transplant recipients after their surgeries. Okay, so there's a little bit higher risk there. All right. So centers across the nation also have requirements to protect surgical patients. Like, for example, got to get a vaccine for hepatitis B. Got to get a vaccine for MMR. Got to make lifestyle changes, right? Like stop drinking alcohol. These requirements increase the likelihood that a transplant will be successful. But Fogner, the person who is willing to give the kidney, says, here I am. I'm willing to be a direct donor to her. Does not affect any other patient on the transplant list. How can I sit here and allow them to murder my friend when I've got a perfectly good kidney and can save her life? Yeah, right? Because that's kind of the justification for not giving somebody that organ. It's, hey, we've got limited organs, right? We just can't print out kidneys. We just don't have a bunch of livers to give everybody. And so in this case, though, we have a direct donor and a direct recipient. Both of them are of a political or a particular religious perspective. Here is both of them talking to the news recently.
Basically, my life is in jeopardy.
Leilani Lutali says she needs one thing to survive, a new kidney. But the Colorado Springs woman is now facing the possibility of not getting one if she continues refusing a COVID-19 vaccine.
I have too many questions that remain unanswered at this point. I feel like I'm being coerced into not being able to wait and see, and that I have to take the shot if I want this life-saving transplant.
Lutali and her potential donor, Jamie Fogner, found out about the change last week while going through compatibility tests. Both say they have religious concerns with taking the vaccine.
When I explained that, no, I wouldn't be able to take the COVID shot, the comment was, well, then your journey ends here because we require all of our donors and all of our recipients to have the COVID-19 vaccine.
All right. Well, your journey ends here. Yeah. And so, I've actually heard that from other people. Even some people here around the office have explained that. Well, they've gone to their primary care physicians and they say, I'm not really interested in that. And it's also being extended into the flu shots. Also not going to take the flu shot. And they literally use that same statement. Okay, well, your journey as a patient here is now over because we require everybody to get the vaccines. And you may be somebody who is experiencing this, right? We're seeing that same resorting, that same bifurcation, the same two tiers, the same two systems, the pro-vaxxers, the pro-liberty people, I would say, on the other side are sort of diverging. It's happening right even in the medical system. And you know what's so interesting about this case? Yeah, we have one woman who says, yeah, I have a kidney. It's unvaxxed. I have another woman. I don't want a vaxxed kidney. I want an unvaxxed kidney, I guess, or probably didn't care about the kidney, but just wants the operation to be done. They won't do it because it's their policy. And this has nothing to do with making sure that the kidney goes to somebody else, right? This woman's not just putting her kidney up on eBay. It's supposed to be going to a direct friend. And they've already worked all of this out. And there's a hospital there that theoretically can perform this procedure. They don't want their business. Go elsewhere. So that's probably what they're going to do. Now, to add a little bit extra spice to this, let's listen in. Did they already have COVID? Maybe. Here.
These show transplant patients are more than 10 times as likely to die from COVID-19 than the general public. UC Health saying this is why it's essential that both the recipient and the living donor be vaccinated. Lutali says she had COVID last summer and isn't terribly concerned.
If I probably came down with a second case of COVID, it would be minimal. And my first time around, I was almost asymptomatic. So I'm not worried about that piece.
She already had COVID in the first place. Right? But now she's got to go through this whole thing because some bureaucrat somewhere said, no, our policy is you gotta go get vaxxed. Is it a medical decision or is this just more bending of the knee? Now, what you see here is it's just starting there in Colorado. Very recently today, we saw it, boom, immediately pop also up in Seattle. The UW, University of Washington Medicine, is also going to deny transplants to unvaccinated patients. It says if you have not been vaccinated, you may have a hard time getting a transplant if you're in Western Washington. Colorado hospitals did it. Now, University of Washington Medicine is also going to do that. They told Fox News that this policy started a few weeks ago. Health officials say the reason for this is safety. When a patient gets a transplant, their immune system is suppressed in a weakened state during this time. They're vulnerable to infections, and COVID-19 can be extremely dangerous for those in immunocompromised positions, if not fatal. Being on a transplant is the ideal time to get vaccinated, and that's when they're more likely to respond to the vaccine. So we've got two hospitals now. If you go over to the University of Washington website, you'll see this FAQ. It says that we have a couple questions that we can ask. It says, do I have to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to relieve a solid organ transplant, like a heart, a kidney, a liver, or a lung? It says, yes, you must be fully vaccinated prior to procedure unless you have a specific medical exception that prevents you from getting the vaccine. Okay, any other exceptions? Let's see here. I'm against COVID-19 because of a sincerely held religious belief. Do I still have to get the vaccine? Yes. Vaccine for COVID-19 is required prior to solid organ transplants at UW Medicine. No matter what your decision, we are here to care for you throughout your journey. Like that? See that language popping up again? It's your journey. If you want to kill yourself by not getting this vaccine, that's your prerogative. But don't blame us for killing you for not helping you get a kidney transplanted, even though we're a hospital and we swore all sorts of oaths to, treat people. It's your fault for not getting the vaccine, not ours. Because we have to save your life and we only have so many kidneys to go around. So you're on your own there. It also says, why? Why do I have to get vaccinated prior to this? It says, well, after a transplant, your immune system is suppressed in a prolonged weakened state. Makes you less able to develop an appropriate immune response. That's why you got to get it first. All right. And what if I refuse the COVID-19 vaccine for non-medical reasons? Well, very simple. You can see that down right here. It says very simple. You will be removed from the wait list and you're going to be deemed ineligible to receive a transplant from University of Washington Medicine. You go into the penalty box. You are a non-compliant subhuman and you don't matter anymore. So get out of our hospital. That's where this is going. Very, very fun stuff. Let's see what you have to say about this over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to pull these questions up in the chat and get right into them. We've got another one here from, let's see here. Wow, this is a nice comment. This is off topic, but this is nice. Just wanted to say thank you for your stream. I've been watching for about a year now, addicted. Rarely watch live. Your stream is the first thing in the morning here in Phuket, Thailand. Thank you for the correct pronunciation there. My gosh, I was going to botch that one. Let's zoom in on that one. Thank you for this. Phuket, Thailand. Otherwise, I would have pronounced it inappropriately. Really appreciate your legal take and your humor on the current issues. Keep up the good work. That's from Ty Livin. Shout out to Ty Livin. Very nice comment. And welcome to our community. I know you just signed up. We have another one from Sergeant Bob says, Colorado is getting more like Oregon. Only it has taller mountains. It's true. That's not a good thing. We have D-Rod says, Snowden has a video discussing our virtual lives and how there's a pattern of life that is captured by smartphones stored for years. One of his suggestions to provide privacy is to have Big Tech delete this information every few years. I'm going to post this over on Locals. Awesome. Thank you, D-Rod. With the information stored on smartphones, who you call, they know everything about you. There is no privacy at all. Time to get a jitterbug phone. That's from D-Rod. That was on the prior segment, but good stuff. Vientikis is here, says, Rob, the psychology of what's going on right now is very close to events of certain people in a book that I'm currently reading. Just the particulars are different. If you people watching on all the platforms want to know what book that is, head on over to Locals and check out the community. You're welcome for the wingman play on the grift, Rob. Thanks, Vientikis. He's helping me continue the grift, which is good. Very, very good. But yes, he did recommend a book. Should I say the name of the book? Vientikis? Should I make him go over there to get it? Yeah, they can go over there and get it. We have another one from Vientikis says, let's make sure I got the details straight. In order to get a life-saving operation, you have to have a medical procedure to prevent spreading a pathogen that doesn't stop spreading the pathogen. Did I get that right? You did, more or less. You got that right. Now, we can't say that the vaccine doesn't reduce transmission because listen to the CDC on all of those things, right? Of course. But yes, the guidance is public and available. Vaccines are safe and effective. We have Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, the HIPAA applies even to doctors and hospitals. I would like to know if HIPAA trumps OSHA. It's going to be a matter of enforcement, right? If the Department of Justice is going to sue businesses for $700,000 if they don't comply with this, the businesses are going to fire people who do not get the vaccine. It's really as simple as that, right? All of the constitutional underpinnings, all of that's going to get hashed out at some point in time, but the damage is already going to be done. This is how the entire Biden administration has been working. They don't care about the Constitution or any rule of law. They just do it, and then everybody springs into action because everybody's spring-loaded with COVID problems, that they make the changes anyways. And the courts will catch up with it later. Snipers here says, my fear is the medical procedure mandate is going to reduce LEO numbers so broadly across the country. It's going to allow this administration to further the federal police state to add to their unconstitutional power grab. Yeah, in addition to just setting up shops all over the place. Capitol Hill police all over the country now. We have Peely Wally says, this is an outrage, Rob. If that idea hits UK shores, I will be raging. The vaccine talk is becoming so overwhelming. None of it makes any sense at all. What about the person that died or is giving the transplant? Maybe they should state they don't want any of their organs going into a vaccinated person. Rules for some, so it's time, so it's a fit to switch it up. Yeah, I mean, is that where we're going to? Like everything is just, like maybe we should have just like dating apps and restaurants only for the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Only enter into business agreements. Hey, vaxxed only. Right? Like that's what this country's coming to. Vaxxed people, back of the bus. Get to the back of the bus. Don't sit at this table. This is for the vaxxed people. This is our water fountain. All you unvaxxed people, you get a different water fountain. It is separate, but it's equal. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like a good plan, right, for this country. It's the Democrats who are talking about it, and they're all like, "Yeah, it's great, it's great. Yeah, more medical segregation in America. Wow, very unifying, very neat." We have Sweet Potato says, sorry about that. Says they've been requiring vaccination for organ transplants for a couple months now in Washington. If you want a sneak preview of hell, just look to Washington. Happening here first. They have you sign an attestation if you're vaxxed or not at my doctor's office. And an eye doctor before you're seen. My crystal ball says system's going to be overwhelmed from the medical professionals refusing the vax on the 18th. They will only have capacity to serve the vaccinated. That's a very interesting dynamic, right? It's to cause such a problem. It's to overwhelm the medical system by getting rid of all of the unvaxxed so that the only people who have the high ground in the medical profession are now the vaxxed. And since they set the rules, all of the unvaxxed are going to be out excommunicated because they've all been fired as a result of the mandates and things of that nature. And so now it's sort of this self-sustaining entity. Since they fired all of their unvaxxed, they don't have capacity to actually help the unvaxxed. And so now it's just going to be one medical system only for the vaxxed people. Yeah, it's a scary thing, but it's happening right now in America. Isn't it fun? We got a lot of questions on this. Let's continue on. Soul Viking says, sad, but many people would want to immediately disqualify people for kidney transplants if it was revealed that they attend Bible studies. Yeah, that might be also, as egregious here. First of all, they were friends, which is like, you know, they were embracing each other without any masks on. Did you see that? They weren't even social distancing, which is offensive as hell. Number two, they're unvaccinated, which it basically is analogous to being pond scum now in America. And thirdly, they might be Christians. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They should just go straight to their re-education camps because they might be actual Christians. They're studying the Bible. This is insane. What kind of country are we living in? John Halgren is here, says, your analogy of the alcoholic versus the person who does not have a disease is flawed. One has a disease, the other does not. The medical professionals responsible for this should be terminated. While discussing my bone marrow transplant, there was never a discussion of vaccine status. This is a horrible, no matter how you look at it. I suppose she should get a back alley kidney transplant now. Yes, using some of that very provocative abortion language. Yeah, back alley kidney transplant. Thank you, John, for being here. Yeah, I understand the analogy of the alcoholic. And my point with that story was to sort of illustrate out, you know, where it might make sense, at least logically to me. But again, you know, we're talking about medical treatment in people's lives. It feels very cruel to me to be sort of bullying people by withholding medical care. Like, is that the standard that we want in this country anywhere? Ty Livin says backroom transplants may become more attractive. Very sad. Ty Livin. We have Jeremy says, did all these morons forget about the ability to test people for COVID before getting the procedure? It's not like they will get COVID from the hospital if everyone is required to get the vaccine to work in the hospital. These people make themselves look flat out stupid. That's from Jeremy Matrita. A lot of questions on this. Former LEO says, since OSHA hasn't issued any formal guidelines, so does that mean the hospital will be assuming the responsibility for the policy? How about a traffic accident with life-threatening injuries and no vaccination? Will that person instantly become a DNR patient? Well, you see many people who are cheering about that, right? Saying that, well, this is good policy. Yeah, I mean, if they're not willing to save themselves, why should we care about them? A lot of that language. A lot of people are very excited about these policies. And then, you can logically extend that to just say, well, what about overweight people or people with STDs or people who jump out of airplanes, or people who do anything with their lives? Or does everybody have to fall in compliance with whatever the medical establishment says is now the medical standard? Everybody's got to get in line. Whatever happened to freedom? Whatever happened to people being able to make their decisions and communicate with their doctors? It's all evaporating. Lord Nelson says they gave that transplant patient a death sentence, except that she has a direct donor. I bounce between stage 3 and 4 kidney failure. My nursey wife convinced me long ago of the following: dialysis will kill you. Not everyone gets a kidney. It's from Lord Nelson. Nursey wife sounds like she's got some very wise information. We have another one from Margaret Thatcher is here. Says the left is always talking about back alley abortions and how unsafe it is. We'll get ready for back alley transplant operations. We have another one from Three Girlies. Nice comment. Says, my brother lives in California. He's only a month older than you are, Rob. He offered a kidney to his wife's coworker earlier this year. Not only did the friend have to be vaccinated, but so did my brother. He was the live donor of the kidney, had to be vaccinated before he could give her the kidney. He said giving his kidney was the best decision he ever made, was willing to take the vaccine to do so. On another note, the University of Colorado Anschutz Center was where my oldest girlie was born. Smiley face. If you are a military member stationed at Buckley Air Force Base in Aurora, Colorado, you are going to the University of Colorado Anschutz Center. Does not surprise me this hospital would require the vaccination. I was actually pregnant with my oldest early in Colorado when they were trying to legalize pot. Tucker had a guy on a few months ago that needed to have a transplant but was not able to take the vaccine physically because of previous issues with vaccines. Now he would die either way. If he got the vaccine, he could die from the vaccine. If he doesn't get the vaccine, he's going to die from not getting the transplant. Talk about a catch-22. That is from Three Girlies in the house. We've got, that's a good comment. Yeah, and those are boots on the ground observations from Colorado. Thanks for sharing those. Speech Unleashed says, even if they both get the vaccine, they can both end up with COVID. Remember the CDC changed the definition of vaccine to make an exception? So the argument of catching COVID is baseless. That's from Speech Unleashed. We have another one. Of course, check the CDC guidelines on that, right? You can't say that a vaccine sort of, well, we're just going to leave it at that, right? We're not even going to talk about the vaccines. We're talking about vaccine mandate policies for transplants. Peely Wally is here, says, I have a younger sister, Rob. If she needed a transplant, if I could help her, I would do it in a heartbeat. She's double vaccinated, though, and I'm not. If it was to be turned down because of that, then I would lose all hope in society altogether. What a sad state of affairs to get into. It is really sad. It is sad. I mean, it really is sad. We're sort of watching people happy that we are bifurcating into two societies. Geomancy Game says, Washington is an absolute cesspool. This mandate from hospitals does not surprise me. I live in the thick of the madness. It's never ending. Homelessness skyrocketing, drugs, needles all over the street, trash gets thrown on the freeways. It's everywhere. Some places are more red than others, but once again, the opposition are spineless cowards to prevent all the wonderful little pet projects that every Democrat wants to do. That's from Geomancy Games. We have The Last Villain says, take the shot or die. Hopefully the internet helps them sue. Religious exemption, equal protection, and science. That's from The Last Villain. We have another question here. D-Rod says, this is a vaccine comment about the vaccines and EUAs and experimental stuff. And so D-Rod, I saw it, but we're going to move on from that one just because of the YouTube policies. We've got Vientica says, being hyperbolic, you see, the Hippocratic Oath always has been bunk. It's all propaganda. Interesting fact, an archaeological dig discovered that Imhotep might be the real father of modern medicine. Hotep Jesus over on Twitter. I think I follow him. That's from Vienticus. We have Three Girlies says, so does this mean that they're going to vaccinate dead donors in order to do a transplant? After all, you're not going to have a donor give a heart or lung without them being dead. Just thinking outside the box. Yeah, what happens if you're an organ donor and you're not vaccinated? Do they still want your organs? Interesting. We have another one from Monster One says, anyone who ever questioned how easy it was for people to follow the little mustache man only need to look at the ease people ate following these orders. People are following those orders, I think is what you're saying. And it's true. Everybody just jumps right into it. John Halgren says, Tinder and Grindr unvaxxed. I'll cut you in on the profits. App will be out in a few days. Yeah, right. Unvaxxed. Or, yeah, I think that's it's probably a pretty good idea. We don't want those tainted cells of the vaxxed. Pure blood, baby. Only pure bloods in this dating pool. That's John Halgren and I were on it. We've got another one from Tree Mendes says, my apologies to you and Vienticus, not to ruin the grift, but you may want to let everyone know Locals is free to look at. That's true. You only have to pay if you want to be able to read the comments, send comments, and be a part of the chat. That's exactly right, Tree Mendes. And it's true, right? And oftentimes I put stuff behind the paywall for the show, but oftentimes I'll just leave out the other stuff open. So it's free. It's a great community. You don't have to pay a thing if you want to just come in and check things out over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have Geomancy. He says, would the medical professionals deny an abortion if the mother was unvaxxed, or would Dems still be okay with that? Very good question. Somebody should ask. Perry Masonary says, backroom transplants. What are we, China? Not yet, but we're getting there soon. I saw Wolfgang Deo found the book, Five Chimneys by Olga Langyi, which was the suggestion from Vienticus. Greg Murat says, where does the unvaccinated rank on the intersectional hierarchy? Oh my goodness, that's a good question. Since most people unvaccinated are POC, people of color, do they go down the oppression hierarchy pyramid? Doesn't that inherently make the intersectional hierarchy racist now? This is a great question, and this is an existential crisis for the believers in the intersectional hierarchy. And what Greg is talking about here is sort of the victim Olympics that you see jockeying around every day. It's like, well, I'm trans. Okay, wow, like you're like a serious like victim. Like you're like at the top of the hierarchy. Like you get a lot of status for that, right? If you're gay, for example, you're somewhere on this hierarchy. Not sure that you're near the top anymore. Sort of been supplanted by some of the other defined groups now. I mean, it used to be like LGB, right? Yeah. And then we got T, and then we got Q, and we got like A, expialidocious, and all of the other letters in the alphabet. And so you got to sort of jockey those different letters. It's like, wow, we have a hierarchy here. Who's on top? Who's like the most important victimology group here? And so now, you've got, people of color, you've got everybody sort of on this list somewhere, but now you've got, like the white Trumper, Republican, racist, those people, they're at the bottom. They're like, there's nobody cares about them. they are the problem. They're not anybody that we should care about. And the unvaxxed are sort of, they're like kind of down at that status. They're like subhumans. They don't even get medical care in this country anymore. And so what Greg is talking about, he's saying, well, wait a minute. Now you've got this conflict because there's a big group of the unvaxxed that are people of color. And so you've got this contradiction because people of color traditionally are higher up on the hierarchy. They're getting, really just, smashed down pretty dramatically with this current administration. But now you've got this tier. You're saying, well, they're people of color. So on the victim Olympics, they're higher up on this scale, whereas the unvaxxed are not. And so it's sort of a merging of these different groups. It's really complicated, Greg, as you can see. It's even a dicey subject to try to explain live on a YouTube show, but it is a very great question. Intersectional hierarchy. Where do POC fit now if they're unvaxxed? Do they go down with the other Trump MAGA lunatics, or are they still at the POC status but slightly demoted because they're unvaxxed? Are the vaxxed people of color now, do they get a higher ranking on the victim Olympics intersectional hierarchy? It's really complicated, Greg. If you have answers on this, I'd love to hear them because I can't make any sense of it. TOS Forever says, those being fired are all intelligent. Might y'all agree they can open their own hospital? Maybe they can cover both parties. I think you'll see that. I really do. I think that you're going to see a continued resortment of a lot of different enterprises in society. You're going to see people just say, I'm not going to go to that restaurant anymore. And those restaurants will move to places where people want their services, or people will change. And it's going to take years for us to get there, but we'll get there. Viantica says, meanwhile, apparently this is the CDC instructions. Vanticus is recommending Jimmy Dore did a great video on CDC instructions and getting the jab. So check out Jimmy Dore for that one. Tweak is here, says, hey, Rob, maybe you've already seen this, but Sweden has paused the use of the Moderna vaccine for people under 30 due to reports of a potential side effect. In the meantime, people will get the Pfizer vaccine. Might be good to know for people who are currently facing vaccine mandates. And this is news, right? Not talking about any of the efficacy of the vaccines at all, but this is just something that The Hill is reporting. Sweden, Denmark hit a pause on the Moderna vaccine for the younger group. So that is some vaccine news there for you. Read that story. Thank you for sharing that with us, Tweak. Have another one from Sergeant Bob, says, just a quick shout out to our international people. We got a lot of them. Scotland, Thailand, Sweden, and all. And we got Australia. We got Melbourne over there from Greg Murat. And yeah, they're all in the house. Shout outs to everybody. It's amazing. It actually blows my mind. Like every time I'm like, this is crazy. I'm so grateful to have your perspective. And we heard from Greg from Australia over on the monthly locals meetup, and he gave us some great insight into what's happening there. Vientika says, I'm practicing medical socialism. I'm letting other people do the work of getting vaccinated so that I don't have to. Herd immunity for the win. It's just redistributing the vaccines. You have a lot of privilege, Vienticus. You're going to redistribute that to the other people without it. We have another one from Avalon Acres, says, speaking to your comments about people being sensitive from Facebook, quote, both my kids and another student were removed from class today, sent to the office for wearing Carhartt hoodies. Don't know what those are. High-vis construction hoodies, bootcut jeans without rips, Romeo shoes. Kids were told by staff at their high school that their clothes were, quote, too Republican, too country, white supremacist, and racist. I fail to see a problem with those clothes. Meanwhile, other students wear spike collars to school, dress with furries for attention, or to show much skin. I'm genuinely confused. Yeah, that is a confusing thing. What does it look like to be too Republican? I don't know. I don't know what that means. But that is that's interesting. So we're seeing that across the schools as well. Let's see any other super chats that came in over on YouTube. Yes, we have several of those. Thank you for those. Wolfgang is in the house. He said for Renee, he gave us a super chat. He says these sick failures are of the Hippocratic Oath are like, we want your kidney, but only want to know how to determine who deserves our kidney. Fred is here, says, God bless you for what you do. God bless you, Fred. Thank you for saying that and for that support. Very nice super chat. I really appreciate you submitting that and being here. We have Wolfgang says, doctors use plausible deniability to evade the oath. We've got Royal Wolf says, solution. Walk on over to Mexico, get the transplant, walk on back. No vax is required. Probably won't be stopped on either trip. That is from Royal Wolf. Wolfgang Deo says, Nick or Rob, who is the greatest grifter? It's a good question. We're going to have to probably do a live stream and debate that out. Yeah, I don't know. Be curious what he has to say about that. We have Manuel Velez super chatted with some love and support. Thanks, Manuel. Wolfgang says, can't find Vienticus references book. You already got it. 5 Chimneys by Olga Legyi. Tager Witziffi's here says, if the government is working to ban abortions, tobacco, alcohol, and junk food, I would believe they cared about public health. They don't. It's about money. Yeah, it is. I think the Moderna guys, the co-founders, are now on like the Forbes 500 list or something like that. I saw a headline like that. Stefania Moore says that, does the hospital in Colorado require organ donors to have any other vaccinations? It's a good question. And I didn't see the details on that, the specifics, because their memo only talked about COVID. So we don't know if they're requiring anything else or if this is all just about COVID compliance. But we saw in the story, right, that there is precedent for this, that people have their vaccines, but I don't know, right? I've never had an organ transplant. When you go in there, do they say, are you up to date on your vaccinations as a regular part of the process? Maybe they do. I don't know. But it's a good question. Wolfgang says, Romney is dressed to Republican. That's a good example. That's a really good example. Yeah, when you look at Mitt Romney, like that's definitely Republican. Good questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over on YouTube. Lots of super chats today. Very much appreciate that. And almost all of them came from Wolfgang Deo. Thank you, Wolfgang, for all of your support. All right, let's see what's going on some of the chats. Shout outs over on Rumble. We've got Rumble Jumpin'. We've got Road Trek Girl. We've got Ravencraft. We've got somebody mentioned that the link that I have on Rumble, G Giant, said that got to fix the Rumble link. So I'll go ahead and do that. But we've got some chat activity going on over there. On Locals, shout outs over to Mustang Jeff's here now. We got Dave 2. Geomancy Games is over there. Avalon Acres, I'm Not Gas, and several others. On YouTube, shout outs to Ben Dover is here. Renee's here. We've got Lean. We got Holy Moly, my stuff stinks. Renee's here along with Wolfgang Deo and Lean, all chatting away. All right, and that, my friends, is it for that segment. We've got one more segment on the show today before we wrap up. We have, oh yeah, this one. This next segment's a little bit of a predicament for me. We've got the FBI on one hand that has been largely a failure in many different investigations that we've been following, including the January 6th Where's Waldo marathon that they've been on for the last 9 months. We've been seeing and covering a lot of their negligence in the Governor Whitmer case. They kind of dropped the ball on a lot of investigations, including, investigating child molesters and rapists in the Olympics, and the list goes on and on. Not really the creme de la creme that many people expect the FBI to be. And so we've got a story here where we're talking about the FBI. Now, we know what my opinion is, and many of you probably share that with the FBI, but the FBI went after another entity that I also kind of not a big fan of. We're talking about police unions. And in this case, it is the Sergeants Benevolent Association from the New York PD. Happens to be a pretty aggressive police union that just got raided. And the president, Edward D. Mullins, had both his home and his office raided by the FBI. So what are you supposed to do when the FBI, an entity that you go, I could take it or leave it, and you have the NYPD, the police union there, the Sergeant Benevolent Association, they're kind of under deep investigation from the FBI. It's kind of that old enemy of my enemy is a friend type of thing. Now, to be fair, I don't think that any one of these entities are my enemies per se, but they are, adversaries, kind of sparring partners on the other side of the legal spectrum. And so we got to decipher through this one. I can't decide, am I team FBI? Am I team New York Police Department, police union boss, or can we just have some fun watching these two sides duke it out? Probably that. Let's dig into the story over from the New York Times. It says the leader of the New York Police Department Sergeants Union, he quits. He resigned recently. We're going to take a look at his letter. Edward D. Mullins, you can see this guy right here. He was the president of the SBA, the Sergeant Benevolent Association. He resigned after investigators came and searched his headquarters of the union and his home. Now, this guy he's kind of a firebrand. The incendiary and confrontational president of one New York City's main police unions resigned on Tuesday evening, last night, hours after federal investigators raided the Manhattan headquarters and his Long Island home. Okay, so it's deep, is where this is going. Not only was it his office, it was also his home. So when you start seeing stuff like that, you kind of go, well, where does your mind go? What types of criminal charges are we talking about? It says here in a statement, the board union from the SBA said that Edward Mullins was, quote, apparently the target of the federal investigation. This is what the SBA looks like over on Twitter. You can see they got about 45,000 followers. SBA NYC is the name of their website. And what we have here is the official Twitter page of the SBA plus 13,000 active and retired sergeants of the NYPD. And so let's see what was happening here. Now, Ed Mullins is, he's right in the heart of New York. And this guy is somebody who I think even is a Trumper. Let's take a look at this. He appeared over on Neil Cavuto, and he's got this QAnon mug back here. You notice that one over there. QAnon. Is he a QAnoner? Is he a Trumper? Is he a criminal? Is he a pedophile? What's going on here? What's he being investigated for? Let's see if we can tease this out. The FBI raided the Sergeants Benevolent Association headquarters. You can see this is what it looks like. It's on War Street in downtown Manhattan early Tuesday morning. This is a picture of FBI agents carrying out boxes of evidence after raiding the SBA headquarters in downtown Manhattan early Tuesday morning. And so, anytime that the FBI or law enforcement agencies are going to go and sort of investigate somebody who or an entity that is closely related to law enforcement, or like an attorney's office or a prosecutor's office, right? There's a lot of steps they go through to make sure that they're not jeopardizing any criminal investigations or any support. So here, right, this is a police union. Theoretically, they are helping a whole number of officers with their cases that are being processed through internal affairs investigations, or they're being, challenged or sued civilly, right? The union is supposed to help police officers battle back against, certain regulations or investigations. That's why they unionize, so that they can pool resources, hire lawyers. For example, the lawyers in Derek Chauvin's case were paid for by his union. Now his union doesn't want to continue to pay for the appeals, and so Derek Chauvin is going to be without a lawyer, it seems like, unless he can raise some funds to support funding an appeal. So the unions are very involved in a lot of these legal cases. And anytime that the feds are going to come in and walk out with boxes of stuff, right, they have to be concerned about that. What happens if they're walking out with case files for a bunch of police officers or case files for a bunch of defendants? It's a pretty big deal. So they have to go through and be very careful that they're not stepping in and gobbling up a bunch of work product that attorneys were working on that might jeopardize the underlying cases. So there must be a pretty damn good reason for them to go into this union office and to this guy's home and seize this stuff. Don't know if it's connected to any, corruption, or if it's to more, more serious, heinous crimes. We just don't know yet. Let's see. It says the union, which describes itself as the 5th largest union in the U.S., added that given the severity of this matter and the uncertainty of its outcome, executive board has asked Mr. Mullins to resign. Federal investigators said earlier on Tuesday they executed search warrants at both houses, the SBA office in Lower Manhattan, plus his home in Port Washington on Long Island. Search connected to an investigation by the FBI and the Public Corruption Unit in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan. Union board said that it was not sure of the scope of the investigation, but said that any other member or of the SBA is probably not involved. They don't believe that anybody's involved. Now, this is from the Twitter account that Ed Mullins actually ran, and you can see he's got kind of a mouth on him. He posted this May 13, 2020, says that NYC health head rejected the New York Police Department mask plea. Right, so they were fighting over masks back then, obviously, like everybody was. And the health head said, "I don't give two rats' asses about your cops," apparently in a New York Post statement. And what Ed Mullins said, the NYPD fails to comment. Why did it take 2 months for it to be made public? Why did Monahan sit silent? He should have exposed her to the media. Then he says, truth is, this bee has blood on her hands. But why should anyone be surprised the NYPD has suffered under de Blasio since he became mayor? Oh, so now we've got a case of sort of a political war that's brewing, right? We have maybe theoretically a QAnoner, Trumper out there, somebody who is contesting a lot of these COVID restrictions, COVID problems, and now he's sort of waging war with de Blasio. Now, an FBI spokesman, Adrienne Senatori, said that only agents were, quote, conducting a law enforcement operation pursuant to an ongoing investigation. Federal agents spent hours inside the union's headquarters where they lowered dark wooden blinds and placed pieces of cardboard inside the windows to stop the public from looking in. At least 11 large cardboard boxes were removed, a black trash bag out of the office. Contents were unknown, though inside one box were 2 folders labeled, quote, evidence, and what appeared to be a large computer hard drive. Oh, very interesting. What kind of evidence was that? Was that FBI evidence or was that SBA evidence? We don't know. Now, the SBA came out and released this statement. They say, "Dear fellow sergeant," they're communicating to everybody that they represent, says, "This morning, as you're no doubt aware, agents with the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York executed a search warrant at the headquarters of the SBA president, Ed Mullins. They also got his residence. Nature and the scope of this investigation not yet known, but it's clear Mullins is the target. No reason to believe that anybody else is being investigated. SBA has and will continue to fully cooperate with law enforcement officials. Given the severity of this matter and the uncertainty of its outcome, the executive board has asked Mullins to resign. This evening, he did. Like all of us, Ed is entitled to the presumption of innocence, no doubt about that. We ask you to withhold judgment until all facts have been established. However, day-to-day functioning is important here and cannot be distracted by the existence of this investigation. We'll continue to investigate, keep you apprised the more that we learn. In the meantime, we're going to remain transparent and keep everybody apprised of all developments." Fraternally, SBA Executive Board. And so Mullins, you'll note, from the Daily News, they say he came under fire back in 2020 when he posted the arrest report of de Blasio's daughter. Remember that? Posted that on social media after her arrest during the George Floyd protest. He was hit with departmental charges for violating the NYPD rules. In another instance of this during the pandemic, he tweeted that the city's health commissioner was a bee who had blood on her hands. We saw that after she sparred with the MPD over 500,000 hospital-grade face masks. And so here what we can see is a political war that has been brewing for a long time. Mayor Bill de Blasio jumped in on this thing and was doing a little bit of a slam dunk, says that Ed Mullins, he posted this on Twitter today, dishonored his uniform, his city, and his union more times than I can count. It's just a matter of time before his endless hatred would catch up with him. That day has come. And so now it's like, oh, we've got a third person here. We've got to deal with the FBI, a major police union president, and Bill de Blasio. And they're all like, you're all jerks. It's like this. It's like the, what do they call it? A Mexican standoff. And so you don't know whose side to take here, but at least we can enjoy a good feud between the two, can't we? Let's take a look and see if you have anything to say about this story over at watchingthewatchers.com. Not a lot of questions. It's a short segment, I know, but let's see if anything came in. We've got Vienticus Prime says, "I ask my Magic 8-Ball every day whether or not the news of the day about the FBI will be good or not." Yeah, and it's usually not. And one other question here from Sergeant Bob says, "This is another reason why many active retired law enforcement people are aligned with you. We used to think of our agencies as symbiotic, no longer. It is more evidence of the weaponization of the DOJ. The DOJ has zero credibility with local police. Although retired, I cannot see locals being willing to cooperate with the feds. Although you may not be a fan of police unions, they do in fact protect the rights of officers with legal representation if need be. My experience with the city of Portland is that the Portland Police Association provided responsible and ethical representation for members." And that's from Sergeant Bob, which is a very much appreciated perspective, right? And so, yes, I understand that there may be some benefits of unionization. I see it from my side of the aisle, right? And so I'm going to always have an issue with what I see from police unions because I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? It's like if you take your car if you call a plumber to your house, he's going to find a problem. You may not have a problem, but a plumber is going to come here and say, you got a leak here, because every house leaks, right? A plumber is there to fix leaks. That's what they do. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm naturally skeptical of police unions. I'm always looking for little areas where they're hiding stuff from me. And so I understand that that's my lens on which I view the world. Sergeant Bob is here as a former police officer, says, listen, I was a sergeant, city of Portland, PPA, the Portland Police Association, provided great representation for me. No problems there. And I think that you can have both perspectives and talk about those things, which is why we're so grateful that Sergeant Bob is here. So yeah, I think that there are probably a lot of good things that they do. Not sure what's happening in this case, though. It's hard to make sense of this one, Sergeant Bob. Got the FBI, got police unions, got Mayor de Blasio. It's all gross. Ty Livin says men in black versus the men in blue. It's a good distinction, right? Seeing a little bit. And it's also interesting, right? It's sort of that the feds versus the local debate, that division seems like it's happening there as well. Ty Livin is in the house. Thunder 7 says, I think he might be a member of the Oath Keepers. That's the real crime. Being a patriot and supporting the Constitution is now a federal crime. It might have been because he has a QAnon mug. So he's basically a domestic terrorist just because he had that mug. That's how things work nowadays. And that, my friends, is it for the questions on that segment over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got shout outs to YouTube. Brian Reinhardt is here. Lean is here playing hooky. Rebecca, Ronnie Cole. We've got C. Reed. RAS Illusion is here. Wolfgang Deo again. All over the place. Over on Rumble, Rumble Jumpin' is there. Road Trek Girl and Ravencraft are chatting all over there. And then, of course, on Locals, a lot of great questions came in. 3 more just came in as I was speaking those. Roger Stone says CNN was right there on time to capture the criminal live on TV. At least they didn't have helicopters and a dawn raid like they did with me. That's a good point. Little distinction there. Former LEO says many people forget that LEOs are citizens too. Hello. Yeah, they are actual people, human beings. Sergeant Bob says, yep, I'll go with you on waiting to see what this is really all about. Yeah, it's a little too early to tell, but we'll continue to keep our eyes on it. Let's see. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. Let's see what we got to welcome some new people to our community. They joined up. We have Lau Patricia, who signed up for the year. Paula Revere's in the house bringing us the news. HSDNP signed up. Ty Livin saw Ty Livin in the chat today. Maxime 27, Unbridled Form. Avia Tricks in the house, Burnt to a Crisp, and Let's Be Fair. Last week, R. Taylor, J. Muay Thai. We have Lula G, Maxim 92, Angel Baby, Hellraiser, Jumpin' Jeff, Desert Daisy, all signed up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can see that big green button over there. If you want to join us, we're going to be back on Saturday, November 6th for our November monthly meetup coming up soon. Not that soon, about literally 30 days from now. So mark that on the calendar. It's going to be on a Saturday, 7 to 8 p.m. Going to be a lot of fun. I forgot to mention this Sunday. Is it this Sunday? Yeah, it's this Sunday. I think it's this Sunday. I'm going to be doing a super mega long live stream on this channel and on the ericshouse.org channel. We're going to talk all about mental health, mental well-being, about grief, about suicide, about loss, about addiction. And so keep your eye on that. It's going to be from 12 to 5 p.m. Arizona time, which is going to be like, I don't know what it is. Translate that time. But it's going to be from 12 to 5. I'm going to be hosting a huge presentation. We have so many amazing people speaking. I'm going to get that calendared, but that is going to be this Sunday. It's for donations. It's to help people recover after they've lost a loved one. And unfortunately, that is happening just way too much these days. So a big mega live stream this Sunday, October 10th, from 12 to 5 Arizona time. If you're around, just come and say hello. It's not going to be political. It's going to all be, very lovey-dovey, healthy, healing, positive energy. And so come check that out. We're going to blast it all over the airwaves, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So keep your eye on that. Otherwise, it's going to be back to business as usual tomorrow, 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and for that one Florida man. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.